Hey everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're grateful to be back and sharing some really awesome information with you guys today. We're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to go back to talking about how Professor Cho was originally using needles when he was first starting to discover some of the points that he had been thinking about. A lot of us know that he was an acupuncturist, however, moved into using the multi-reflex tools. So we want to get to know a little bit more about that and why he moved to the detector in order to start activating and stimulating some of these points. So working the difference between the zones and detecting the points. And what is the purpose of even using the detector? We're starting to see a lot more people interested in using the detector, and it's absolutely fascinating. So we want to touch briefly on the three different styles of detectors that we have and the benefit of each of those ends. We'll have Patryck and I show you the art of detection and coming into the point and how to stimulate it. And even from a reflexology point, why do we even want to detect this way? Because it can help us know the treatment plan that we're going to go through, how we start to customize things, and how we start to know where some of the imbalances are in the body. So, difference between kind of protocols and formulas. So I'm excited to get started. So thanks for coming and joining us, Patryck.
Hello, how are you? Hmm,
I'm good. How are
fine.
you?
So, mm, we talk.
So it's really interesting. I think we have such a great topic to talk about today. I'm sure it's something that people have questions about in their minds a lot in terms of Professor Cho and him being an acupuncturist, using needles, then not using needles. So can you tell us a little bit about that history and, why he even moved away from needles?
Yes, well, at the beginning, yes, true, he was an acupuncturist, and because his first worry was to discover a way of discovering points, the points on the meridians in acupuncture. So he was very into trying to discover how to discover points. And well, he never managed to have a very clear answer. Some were saying, oh, it's very old, 2000 years, others 5000 years. And but little by little he found out that in fact the way of discovering things is to combine many ideas. So he was very interested into linguistic, the study of the language, Vietnamese in this case, because Vietnamese it's language that is composing words with little words. And so many words have a meaning because each part of the word has a different meaning, and combined they have another meaning. So he was very intrigued by this way of, for example, he's usually giving the example that the wrist, it's called kotai in Vietnamese. Well, forgive my pronunciation, of course. And the ankle, it's called ko chin, and the neck, it's called ko hong. Okay, and so why this ko, which means in fact neck of the head, neck of the hand, neck of the foot. So this is a great example to understand also the similarity in sounds, in way of calling something, and in shapes. Okay, because it's true that the wrist looks like a neck also. So this was one clue. Another thing also, he was very interested into philosophy, Oriental philosophy, and reading the Yi King, which is this big book about the mutation, we call it also. And so you can read and use this book the way you want. So many people are using it as an oraculus, and you can also, when you have a problem or an idea or an intention, it's a good way to open your mind. Some sentences are very good to open your mind, whatever you are doing. So in his case, he was very into therapy. When a sentence like one is everything and everything is one, when he was reading something like this, he was understanding that we can find everything about the body everywhere. When a sentence was saying there is yin inside the yang and vice versa, also he was transforming and translating this into pain and no pain, right? But at this epoch he was still working with needles. And so when the thing is that he had many theories and hypotheses, okay, but you have to check things, no, in a clinical way. And he has been very lucky because just after the war, when the Vietnam Big War finished, he has been contracted as an acupuncturist in big centers where they used to join to put groups of drug addicts that have been prisoners or working with the Americans, depending on where you were in Vietnam. The North was against the South. There were three wars in the same time. Okay, so in the South, they built a big center, a big clinic, a big hospital, if you want, and he has been contracted as an acupuncturist to help those people to pass their abstinency, you say, no, withdrawal or abstinency crisis.
Withdrawal symptoms.
Yes, because they were heroin drug addicts, okay, the majority, and also many other diseases, of course, like asthma, pains, and many injuries from the war. And so here it was so lucky to have this opportunity because we were talking about thousands of patients stuck there, not hundred, many, many. So he started trying to check his hypothesis about the similarity of shape, about the yin and the yang for pain or no pain. And at this time, he was working with needles, and he started on the nose, looking for back pains on the nose because the similarity of shape of the nose, it's quite obvious with the back, okay? So he was trying there and he found some painful points. At this time, the detector, what we call the detector, was not invented yet. He was just pressing with something. And when he was finding a painful point, he was also then putting a needle, a micro needle, inside this point. And when the patient was saying, no, you didn't put a needle, so they were not feeling the pain of the needle, then suddenly something was happening. Some was feeling heat in the back, other were feeling an electricity string running along the back, and the pain was relieved. We still have those experiences with the patients when we are using our tools. Some people are very sensitive and they tell you suddenly they feel a heat in a part of the body, and it's very nice and funny to check the diagrams. When the person that doesn't know anything about Dien Chan is able to tell you, oh, I feel a heat here. Is it normal? Yes, it's normal because I am on your lower back here. So at the beginning, he was discovering 1 point a day nearly with this idea, right? He was finding points, putting some needle inside, but he has another very important worry. It was to be able to discover or invent a technique to help poor people to treat themselves on common disorders, right? And so, of course, to be able to put needles in the face on very precise coordinates, it's not very easy and less for yourself, okay? So then he continued studying. He started having some good students in this hospital working with him and very interested in his new method because he was there, discovering a new network of points. They are not points of acupuncture. They are not points of anything. They are really new. Some can be coincident with some of the points of acupuncture, but they have a different effect and indication. And so he was Professor Cho is very agile. You say maybe dexterity. Do you use this word? And so he's very
Oh,
elegant.
agile, like him being able to use both hands and
Exactly. He's very elegant in his movement also. And so he found out that some students that were very good and learning very fast and discovering things with him were only using the right hand, for example, and also that the patients were not able to do this alone, right? So he came back to another idea saying, but do I really need this non-painful point with the needle? Do I really need this? So he started looking for something with the proper diameter to be able to stimulate the point without having press and to press, yes, but without having to pinch, to poke inside the skin, right? And so he discovered that it was working the same way. Okay, so this was a very interesting, because then he could press the points and combine them faster and have very good results. So this is the beginning of the discovering. So he had, this map is full of 257 points. There is no more than 500, and we are not keeping the most important. I say this because I can hear so many fake news, like the other one says. And no, it's not true. There are 257 points, even if they are very big numbers. There is a whole story about why they are missing numbers. And so with those points and combining them, he was having very good results. So because he started on the nose, then because of those patients with asthma and respiratory disorders, he started immediately to guess that the cheek must be a good place for the lungs. But so he was just taking notes at this time, and so he didn't know the diagrams that we know them now. Okay, he was still working on the map, right? And thanks to the work of a Canadian neuro practitioner in 1937, I think Dr. Penfield is called, that was doing some experiments in the brain with electrodes on an open skull, okay, on a live person, and putting some electrical electrodes to give some impulsions, and was discovering in the brain the parts that are related to parts of the body. Okay, so when they put a bit of electricity on some place, you move the hand, you move the neck, you move the hand and the feet. And this work has been published in a scientific magazine. And Professor Cho, that was really interested in the other medicines also, saw these diagrams that we call Penfield now. And looking at this diagram, he understood that many of his points from the map were describing a constellation, we could say, no? Were describing a diagram. But why he was interested in diagram? Because of the work of another doctor called Dr Nogier, a French one, who was discovering a diagram inside the ear, the auriculotherapy, or ear reflexology, if you want. And so because he had this idea of Dr Nogier was very interesting, and thanks to the work of this neurosurgeon, he understood, suddenly he had a flash, that his map, in fact, was describing many diagrams. That's why we talk about multi-reflexology. And those many, so he started joining the points to find the homunculus of Penfield. It's called like this, the discovering in the brain. And joining them, he understood that many other points were, yes, they were falling onto the back, onto the hip, and it was correct. He had in his note that the points over there were good to treat the hip. He had in his note that points over there were good to treat the foot or feet pain, right? So thanks to this, he took back his map and his notes on each point and joined them following the logic of the anatomy. So if we come back to the one we were talking about, the back on the nose, he knew he had some very good results for the lower back and the back pain and the neck here. So he started drawing and joining only those effects of those points, and managed to draw the first the first representation of the whole body on the face. Okay. So this is a bit roughly, and there are more details, of course, but the story. So he's discovering points, he's discovering tools, and he's discovering diagrams. And thanks to those diagrams, he then was only having the detector already. He started with one made by glass, it was breaking or too thick. Well, there is a whole history. He has a very nice cupboard in his house full of all the little detector and the history of invention. It's very interesting. And so thanks to this, of course, not everybody is the same. You will have people that answer very well to the pressure of a point, But then you will have people that don't like for the needles. You have people that answer well to an acupuncture treatment, and others are not so receptive to this, right? So it depends. That's why we always say tui. That means it depends in Vietnamese. It's the root of the relativism, if you want. And and so he discovered then that not only the pressure of points were necessary, and thanks to the diagrams, he discovered that we have to stimulate the reflex zones. Okay, he was not talking about reflexology at this time, but there it's reflexology in the way that we have to stimulate. So he started inventing tools with a yang effect or with a yin effect. Okay. To come back to one thing that was so important for him, it's the yin and the yang, but in a practical way. This is what is nice in Dien Chan, as you know. Mhm.
Right. No, I think that's super fascinating. And I really like how you talked about him wanting to discover something for self-care and something that people can treat themselves for common ailments. And it's so important for us to feel empowered and to know that a technique was really developed for people to be able to empower themselves. I like how you also talked about the detector and the evolution of the detector and being able to find the sensitivity of the point. In reflexology, in foot and ear, and all techniques of
Mhm.
reflexology, we always are looking to discover the tenderness behind a point. We say that the larger degree of tenderness behind a point would indicate to us and allow us to use some diagnostics tools to be able to discover the imbalances in the
Mhm.
body. And when a point is much more tender, we would say that that's a much more important point. So being able to discover these tendernesses and let those help us determine our treatment plan is going to be so effective.
Exactly.
And so there's a difference between stimulating a BQC point or stimulating a point and working the zone of a point. So maybe you can touch on the difference between why it's so important for us to use the art of detection when we're actually discovering the points and discovering the things that are needed, or how we can start to customize a formula for people versus working some of the zones. I know you talked about the sensitivity of points, and I also thought that was very cool, is that because for me, acupuncture, it sometimes is helpful, it's sometimes not. I need different types of
Exactly.
stimulations on some of the different points
Mm.
as well. And so being able to show that we have different
Mhm.
detectors that allow us to quickly, very quickly adjust to the type of sensitivity that we have on the face. And that's one of the parts that I love teaching so much about this
You're
technique.
right.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what the purpose of detecting and why we want to detect by holding still versus being able to work out a zone with the different types of effects.
Yes, I mean, detecting and rolling zones or stimulating reflex zones, it's complementary. It's complementary. There is not something better than the others. No, no, it's completely complementary. Most of the time, to say it very fast, when we create a plan to treat someone, depending on what they have, we might need several sessions, obviously, but we take care of the general state, and Dien Chan goes further because we go to the body also when it's physical located somewhere else. Okay, so we use the tools, the yin or the yang, depending on the symptoms on the body. Then we translate all this on the face thanks to the diagrams with the same type of effect. If it was yang that we've chosen for the body, we will continue normally. We will continue with the same one here, and then we can consolidate and complement our work, our treatment with some precise points. For example, if we have someone with tension in the shoulder, okay? A typical tension of shoulder. First, many origin can have this. Maybe they've been carrying heavy bags of sand, or maybe they are just very stressed, or maybe they have a very bad position working on the computer, or there are many reasons for this, okay? So let's try with a few questions first to understand. So if it's a stress, for example, then we can start first looking if the description of the pain is more yang or more yin. Roughly, yang would be very tight, very like a string, very hot also, and yin would be very diffused, very inside, okay, much more. So we use the contrary effect tool first to go on to the body place, the body part, to be able to call the brain and also increase the microcirculation of the zone, which is always good as any massage. Okay, so this, okay. Then imagine they said that it was because of stress. In this case, we have some protocol with the yin rake first to calm down the nervous system. We can use then the little hammer to do a few points of the nervous system we know. But imagine it's not this. It's more a muscular problem. So then we jump onto the diagram of the shoulder, the first one we were talking before, the one we call the red man or Mr. Yang, okay? And we roll, imagine that on the shoulder, it was very effective, a yin effect. So we continue here. Now that we started on the body, we continue on the diagram. This is, and then when we have done this, we can complement with some points, not here necessarily, no. If it's something related to muscle, we are going to use knowledge of, for example, the Chinese medicine that is telling you that the muscle, we can relax them, stimulating the spleen and the stomach. So we will go on the left side and look, thanks to the diagram of the organs, on where is the spleen, and we can look for a precise 37 point, called 37 or called 39, and check. So this is to complement a treatment. So when we do only points, it's because or we don't have time or we are lazy and we want to have a solution in a very fast. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it can work when the disease or the problem is not very old and not very deep, okay? So if it's just a young boy that has been playing hockey and they have a pain, obviously you will be a hero because with 1 point they don't have more pain. But this is not the typical type of person we have in a consultation room, isn't it? So it's better to make a full treatment. So the points are very complementary. If we only do the zone and the reflex zones, also we can have very good results. But sometimes it's interesting to, when we know more about the origin of the problem, to try to complement or with specific points that we know, or with some formulas of points that combined together have also another effect. And this is what we study also in the course.
Yes. But I guess, Patryck, so working zones, you're going to be working more massage, rolling.
Exactly.
When you're working points, are you also then
No,
working
no, no, no.
points like
When
this? I
we,
think we need to clarify for our listeners what the difference is between working generally, because you can also work generally with a detector. So what's the
if
difference
you
of your technique?
if you do this, for example, if you do this, it's a stimulation, yes, but it's not working points. To do this, it's to stimulate the zone of the liver, for example, to be able to have a second whiskey, for example. So,
Yeah.
so okay, so this, now, if you want to stimulate the energy of the point 50, the BQC point 50, that is here, okay, then you have to learn to detect. That means that you have to be able to hold correctly your detector. He doesn't have to be loose like this. It's not a dart game neither. So it's important to be, well, I'm on myself, okay, but it would be good to have a patient, but it's a bit late here. So it's to detect, and to detect means to go towards the point we want and we think it is. And when we find it, Well, my liver is not painful, so I can continue having beers. But I don't have any
Yeah.
painful point. I don't know. But imagine this one is painful. So when you find it, and you have to be very careful because you don't know, you have to learn the language, the way the person is expressing the sensitiveness. Okay, this is the tenderness of the point. It's very important. Not everybody is doing something with their eyes, or moving, or saying I. No, not everybody. So it's important to, some people just doing this at the beginning, they are sensitive. So we have to learn to detect. We have to learn to detect. And when we find the point, imagine this one is painful. I'm sure I'm not exactly, I'm going to look on the, because on yourself, if you want to practice points on yourself, remember what we say to all the students, you need a mirror. It's impossible. When you do this like this, you are not on the point. Okay? So if you look for the point like this, then you, when you find it, you hold a 30-second pressure.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we talk about that holding for 30 seconds because, with a lot of people becoming more interested in Dien Chen, the idea of working on skin and muscles, it seems very superficial and very localized. But when we start working on points and when we start working with the internal workings of the brain and the nervous system, we need to be able to send signals through the entire body. And so that point of working on the point and holding it for 30 seconds is allowing the body to catch up. It's allowing things to move and it's allowing the energy to flow and the circulation to increase. It really creates that
Yeah.
reaction and stimulation that we're looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah. Completely. No, no, it's very important. I mean, you are not doing Dien Chan if you don't do points. You are not doing Dien Chan if you only do zones, and you are not only doing Dien Chan if you don't use also the body. And you are not doing Dien Chan if you are not using the yin and the yang effects. It can be very
Yes.
interesting. There are other methods, all inspired by Dien Chan, but it's not multi-reflexology Dien Chan. If you're only using one diagrams, and if you squash all the diagrams in one, it's also completely wrong. We are not flat. We are not a drawing. We are 3D and we are live. So things are moving, and we are talking about movements of fluids, of liquids, of blood, of lymph. And so, yes, and the combinations of points are very important. It's not the point that does this. No, no, it's the combination of points that do things also.
Mhm.
So this is very interesting, but little by little, yes, with the first module,
Absolutely.
mm, with the first module, you do facial reflexology. Yes, okay, because you learn the diagrams, you learn how to use the tools, and you start doing facial reflexology, if we call it. But Yen Chan is not this. It's much more. It's much more. It's because we are going to take care of the whole general state of the parts of the body. Then we are going to combine with formulas that can give movement to the what we call the vital energy, the qi, no, in the Chinese medicine. But it's not Chinese medicine either. It's very interesting to have knowledge of Western medicine and to know what each organs are doing. It's also interesting to know when a doctor is giving you a special medicine, a pill. It's interesting to know what is the effect of the pill. What is this pill pretending to do? What and so this is going to give us ideas because to practice Dien Chan, it's to translate all the information we have from the patients, obviously, but also from his doctor, also from an acupuncturist that knows more. And what would you do? I put the needles on this meridian. Okay, we translate. We can access this energy also with the points, with the zone on the body, with the body itself, with the big hammer. We can follow the path of a meridian. So yes, to do the enchant is all this whole. It's not to use only a detector or not only and with the hands also. You don't manage. It's not precise. It's well-being. It's interesting, but it's not to treat really. It's to relax. It's to rebalance superficially. But to do real Dien Chan, you have to combine the techniques of the multi-reflex tools with the yin and the yang effects. You have to combine the several diagrams to find which one is open. Professor Cho used to tell me, I'm the key master. In the key master, he wanted to say that he has a bunch of keys. I have a bunch of doors, the diagrams, the points, all these are doors. I have to find the correct key to open the correct door. And it depends. Maybe your patient, the example we were taking just before about the stiff neck or the shoulder pain, maybe it's working here today, but another time no, because you are going deeper on several layers. So maybe next time
Yeah.
you will have a better effect, and also because maybe the first time he came stressed, but the second no, and he still have a pain. So we have to look for the origin of the problem. So that's why it's a combination of what also it's more accepted by the patient, because not everybody is receptive to a point stimulation or a roller stimulation. And it's not also because you press more that it's more effective. Ooh, be careful with this.
Yes. No, I think it's so, and I love that you call it kind of care designing.
Yeah.
Because, for me, being into energy and being into nutrition and all of those different things, being able to bring the science of it and then learning a little bit about Chinese medicine and what a little I know about Ayurvedic, but also personal training, I'm easily able to combine all of those things. But I think one thing that our listeners need to know is that sometimes you get confused by applying protocol the same time every time. And so I really hope that you'll go back and replay exactly what Patryck just said, is that some people will come one time displaying this and another time they will come displaying another time. So one thing that is so important is to not forget the patient. Don't
Yes.
try and demonstrate that this protocol is going to fix your problem regardless of where you're at, the client is at. Really being able to interact with the client, which is where that Dien Chan comes from, the diagnostics and treatment at the same time that we talked about in our last interview
Hmm.
together.
Hmm.
So it's really through learning and understanding and practicing and combining all of these different things that you get the very fast
It's an
results.
important, very important point you are underlining here, because to become a care designer, that means to be able to personalize, to adapt perfectly your protocol to the person and the moment, and the moment. And this, it's only learning little by little, module after module. First, okay, you apply what you learn and what you have in the app, in the book, whatever. It's normal. Like this, you practice. But little by little, you learn. With the second module, you learn the map and the points and how to use them. And in the third, it's where we really would like you to become a care designer, a composer. So at the beginning, you learn the notes or the grammar, the music grammar. At the second, you learn to be an interpret, and it's not easy. You have to have your style, and you find your style, because everybody is going to have his own gesture, his own movement, his own way of listening and translating into the enchant what they get from the person that is coming. And then at the end, what we really want at the international school is to make each student become a designer, an artist. It's to be able to create in the moment. That's why we produce so many articles, books, and apps and all this. It's just to help everybody to have inspiration. We cannot remember all the points, and we cannot remember, and sometimes we forget. And because we have such a good result with the red man, we forget that also we have a shoulder on another one. And this is always like this. Always, so when we have such a good result with a tool, we think that this tool is the best one, and then you have the patient that comes that it doesn't work at all. So an invitation to look for the ideas, to find inspiration. All those resources are made for this, not to do. I never say do what I do. No, 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 no. At the beginning, it's normal. You copy Erica, you copy me in the course. It's normal. It's normal because you need an exam. But then, little by little, you will find your way. But of course, your way, it's going to be adapted to your clientele. And this is quite typical. I don't know why, but some people attract a type of people and others have a different. Nobody is the best therapist, obviously. No, you will be liked by some people and not by others. Everybody has its own style, but you cannot pretend that what you are doing is the method. No, it's your way of your interpretation of the method, and this is perfect for the consultation room, but not to teach. To teach, you have to teach the roots. You have to have many examples of many ways of doing it. Okay, so this is when we explain all this during the course, then the student understand that okay, they don't have to do exactly the way I do, but I want them to be able to hold correctly the detector. I want them to understand that you have to be perpendicular to the surface. How many times I repeat this? And why? Because then they will know they do it correctly. And once you know that you do something in the right way, you can make it your style. Okay, and this is the objective of all this teaching. Is it like you said? There is no best solution. We have to be able to adapt. All right.
Yes, I think it's so important for people, and we're excited to try and get back out there because this is definitely something, what we struggle with at the international school is online versus in person, because it's such a technique that has to be done in person in terms of learning the different sensations and working
Of
with different
course.
people to start to comprehend, because a lot of these things, it's the first time we've heard them. It's the first time, we're trying to wrap our brain around it, and that's completely normal. So we're excited to just continue reaching out and helping you with some of our small videos. So make sure that you are following the Multi-Reflex channel,
Mm-hmm.
even the Facebook group. We have Instagram, where we've got lots of different avenues, and we'll be launching and looking at some new things in terms of the club.
Yes,
So we're
and we are
excited
going
for
to
that.
translate also many material that we already have in French and Spanish into English. And if you read French, you can access it. But what is important is that we are living in a strange situation now. The mask, the quarantine, where we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. But at least we can take full advantage to also us make a little effort to bring the theory at least to save time, and maybe when things are going to get better we will need obviously the physical meeting, but at least we can advance like this doing things through the screens to explain the real story of Dien Chan, the basis, and okay, so you have an online course introduction which is very good so it's a good way also to start, and many people are interested into the use of the enchant for aesthetic and wellness. We have also the Chanbote we can talk about in another program. What do you think?
Yeah, no problem. I think it's great. Such good information. I really hope that some of our students are re-listening this and gaining more inspiration for this, and um, sparking some new ideas and some new things. And even if it's for your family or your loved ones, or whomever is close to you right now. So thank you so much, Patryck, for taking the time and explaining some of these things. And
Pleasure.
we look forward to the next time.
Okay. Bye bye. We see you soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.